You're still here with your homeboy first, and this is the realest, most entertaining sports show in the game. That is, put it on something. Make sure y'all hit that subscribe button. It costs you nothing to hit that button. And also make sure you put all your people on this. You feel me? Jackson State University been feeling a lot of fake love, y'all. A lot of it. And I don't like it. I don't like it. And what I don't like the most is that some of y'all slick falling for it. I'm telling you, be well, be well, be well. We see some of it from Governor Tate Reeves, the same governor that when he was asked about Brett Favre using welfare money to build the volleyball facility down there at Southern Miss, he want to deflect and throw shots at Jackson State and say that he doesn't like state funds being used. He doesn't like the idea of state funds being used to build a stadium for Jackson State University. That same Tate Reeves last week talking about he's hopeful that deal gonna get done. Fake love, y'all. Fake love. Some of the fake love coming from our own people. Our own people. You got a lot of new Jackson State fans that ain't really Jackson State fans. They just Deion Sanders fans. They're rooting for Jackson State like RG3, Robert Griffin III. He keeps Jackson State in his teams to watch things. But at the same time, he says stuff like Auburn needs to make Coach Prime an offer he can't refuse. That ain't in the best interest of Jackson State University. Obviously, you ain't down with Jackson State, you're down with Coach Prime. And I'm seeing a lot of this. So I wanted to ask my OG about both instances. Well, because y'all know the OG already gave y'all the history on the bet. If you missed that, y'all need to go back and check that out, okay? But he's already giving you that. So I wanted to ask him about old Tate Reeves, but also about this fake love from our own people who don't get it, who don't see the bigger picture of Coach Prime being at Jackson State University. So without further ado, I present to you my esteemed OG, Liegh McKinnis. OG, what's happening, man?
Hey, look here. It's always a good happening when I'm here with brother first. So, and much to my wife happiness, she get to turn on and get an extra reason to watch because she always tuning in. Look, I believe her notification stronger than mine. She catching me now. So, but again, you know how I always have to start off, man. Just, and again, a lot of people don't like these references, and I don't even like, I'm not the most, quote, religious person, but I tell people that the Apostle Paul was called for a reason. And that was because if God needed a message, he needed an OG to get that message out. And I'm going to keep telling you, you touching people that a lot of people can't touch. So don't worry about what's in the comments. Don't worry about, you see your channel growing, and your channel is growing because people know they can get that honest. The Parliament Funkadelic say that uncut funk, P-funk, pure funk. The bomb, right? See, people think Snoop and Dre stuff. No, the bomb come from George Clinton and Bootsy Collins and Pollock. The bomb is that pure funk. And so if you want that pure funk, come to brother first and the whole crew, because I got to bring the whole crew in. So I always have to get started by saying, I know that the culture is in good hands, and I get to be a retired person and just get to write and enjoy what you young brothers doing. So yeah, I'm happy to be here. We can get on with it.
Thank you. Well, OG, first of all, what are your thoughts on the latest comments by Tate Reeves? Because I know I brought you on previously when he made the comments basically coming for us in the idea that we think some of our taxpayer money should go to building a stadium at a public university, okay? But now you've seen him switch it up, right before an election, So what were your thoughts on that first?
So, the real issue is the problem with folks like Tate Reeves, Tater Tot as we call him, is not just his racism, but the fact that he pimps racism and white supremacy to further his own agenda, and poor white people don't even know that they being pimped. So let me show you how he is one of the ultimate pimps in the game. In full transparency, there was always ongoing backroom talks about the stadium because everybody knew that the racist Mississippi legislator wants to use eminent domain to take the vet from Jackson State and give the land to the University of Mississippi Medical Center for expansion. Now, allow me to say this, because a lot of people who are not critical thinkers don't understand that two conflicting things can be simultaneously true. Right, UMMC, right, the University of Mississippi Medical Center. We call it here in Mississippi, we call it UMMC. And sometimes you can't even hear both M's because, you know, that southern twang we got. Sometimes it just sounds like UMC, right? They have to expand because, believe it or not, UMMC is rated as one of the top teaching hospitals on the planet. That's why during the pandemic, they were the only hospital that was able to build their own ventilators while other hospitals were begging for assistance. So UMMC must expand just because they are highly touted. However, their expansion must not be at the detriment to Jackson State. While we know that eminent domain is often used to allow government agencies to lowball homeowners and private businesses to take their land, African Americans have always been doubly mistreated by this process of eminent domain. For example, check this out, brother. First, did you know that when these talks first got started, the state legislator wanted to only build Jackson State a 15,000 seat stadium, which is far below our attendance as the only HBCU to lead the FCS in attendance, doing so multiple times before Coach Sanders arrived. Then after 15,000, after a few years went by, they increased it to 25,000 seats. And now the office is at 35,000 seats. So the talks about JSU getting a new stadium never stopped because, again, the plan was always to give that land to UMMC. But let's be clear. We've established how old Tate is a white supremacist, right? And a pimp on top of being a white supremacist. But I can't discuss white supremacy without discussing Negro ineptitude. One of the hurdles keeping JSU from being able to fight more forthrightly for a larger stadium is because even though we regularly set and break attendance records, we only sell about 8,000 season tickets per year. This is one of the major reasons why A.D. Ashley Robinson has been trying his best to get us to increase the number of season ticket sales to 25,000, so it'll give us more leverage when negotiating with the state legislature while also providing the necessary funding that the football program needs, right? I don't understand how Jackson State, we have 50,000 registered alumni, yet only 8,000 season tickets sold regularly. But I will say this, having worked in various entertainment arenas and having known a lot of comics and musicians, traditionally, and even Brother First, you'll know this because you put on certain shows, traditionally, African Americans purchase their tickets either the week of or the day of the event. We tend not to purchase our tickets well in advance for an event. But allow me to lay this on you, brother, first. Okay. Because we love to talk about economics. While part of that has to do with economics, part of that also has to do with black folks always prioritizing our fashion sense over the actual event. Black people, we tend to pay to get our hair done, new clothes, and new shoes. And then after we pay for all that, then we'll purchase our ticket the week of or the day of the event. I've never understood the need to be better dressed than the people you going to see put a show on. But hey, that's part of our culture. So economics alone is not the only reason why more African Americans don't purchase season tickets. A lot of this has to do with our priorities. And when we're discussing season tickets, and we need to understand this, season tickets is one of the primary ways of supporting your school financially. I don't want to tell people what their priorities should be, but do you really need a new pair of shoes or a new outfit for every game you attend? Check this out, brother, first. I've been wearing the same shirt, a shirt that I made, by the way, to all Jackson State games since 2002. I made this shirt, and I don't know if you can see it. I made this shirt in 2002 with the help of my cousin, and I've been wearing this same shirt. So I've never had to get a new outfit or a new anything for the past 22 years. I only recently started wearing other JSU gear when we started having a specific culture. I mean, a specific color theme. So part of our fight is against Tate Top being the pimp that he is. Remember, 15,000, that's absurd to offer Jackson State a 15,000 seat stadium. So, but the other part of it is, I keep telling you, you can't just love Jackson State on Twitter. You can't just love Jackson State on Instagram. If you're not buying season tickets, and I mean for football, for basketball, for baseball, if you're not buying gear from officially licensed vendors, Reeves Enterprises being one, if you're not doing that, then you are allowing the white supremacists to win both the battle and the war. So we got it up to 35,000 seats. You know, there's some debate on whether or not we need more. But to your initial point, yeah, it is fake love by Tate Top, because the biggest fake of it is those talks were always ongoing as he's acting like he's now come to some enlightenment about giving us a new state.
Well, OG, let's take the second part then. With us, as you said, Negro ineptitude, and I think this is another example of it, that you got black people who are unattached to some of these schools that are calling for prime. Okay, if you're a black person that went to Georgia Tech, Auburn, or something like that, okay, I can understand you on Deion Sanders. That's your school, and you see what he's doing. Okay, cool. But I'm seeing folks outside of these schools or whatever, they just want to see prime go get a job, and they're calling for it and totally oblivious to what this man's impact is, not only for Jackson State University, because when game day came to Jackson to see Jackson State, they saw Southern too. So it uplifts us all, and they are totally oblivious to that. And they're acting like they're down with us at Jackson State, but really they just love Coach Prime. What are your thoughts about them, OG?
So I'm gonna get you to indulge me for a moment, because I got a lot to say about this type of fake love, but I want to give some education and some history along with this. To address this issue thoroughly, we must discuss traditional versus non-traditional JSU fans. Traditional JSU fans can be categorized 4 ways. People who attended Jackson State, people who were raised in the city of Jackson with JSU as their local team, people who have family members associated with Jackson State, and people who didn't attend Jackson State but became employees of Jackson State and made a significant contribution. People like Dr. Betty Ward Fletcher, who was a Tougaloo grad, but served as the head of Jackson State Research and Development and acting president. And also the wonderful Dr. Jackie Franklin, who was a great JSU professor who attended Xavier but as an undergrad, but became one of the top professors and researchers and publishers that Jackson State had, who was also the mother of the owner of the great Reeves Enterprises. So any of those 4 aspects can make someone a traditional JSU fan. And the only problem with traditional JSU fans is that they can become stuck in their ways and not want to change, or think that something new is an affront to or somehow disparages their traditional love. For instance, a lot of JSU traditionalists don't like the different uniforms and color schemes. That doesn't bother me that much, because again, as long as we are wearing our traditional blue and white colors most of the time, I'm good. Because you know, the young folks, the young kids today, they like all those different, I think Oregon started all that with all the different color schemes, and so it's just part of the new young folks culture. Now, just as an aside, I know we want to talk about this, but you can explain this to me as a traditionalist that I don't understand about college football, which is the rule that 2 guys can wear the same number as long as they ain't on the field together, or one is on offense and one is on defense. Now, that doesn't make sense to me at all, because in my day, you wear your number, Coach First. Like, when my coach said 13, I knew he was talking to me. He usually meant 13, move down on the bench so some of the starters can sit down. But otherwise, when he said 13, I knew that he was referring to me, that 13 was who he was calling. So now, that doesn't make sense to me, but even as a traditionalist, I just ignore it, because I just figured that's part of what the new folks are doing. They let both people have 2 different numbers. Now, let's discuss what then are non-traditional fans. Non-traditional JSU fans are fans who became Jackson State fans as a result of Coach Sanders initially arriving, or those who became fans after Jackson State became the hottest college in America? Now, before we discuss the negatives of non-traditional fans, we must state that many people fall into this category because many people have or had a favorite player who was traded to a new team, and they simply followed their favorite player to that new team. So this is nothing new. As big as the Laker franchise is, many folks like me follow LeBron James to the Lakers. As much as I admire the Laker organization, I was never a traditional Laker fan. So I follow LeBron James from the Heat to the Cavaliers to the Lakers, but that wasn't new for me either because my favorite NBA player of all time was Moses Malone. Hard work. That was his nickname, hard work. And I followed him from the Rockets to the 76ers. Yet even earlier than that, brother, my first true athletic love is baseball. And my favorite baseball team of all time was the 1975, 1976 back-to-back World Series champions, the Cincinnati Reds, aka the Big Red Machine. That was the first team that I loved because that team, brother, it had 9 multi All-Stars in the lineup and 8 future Hall of Famers. That was the greatest team in baseball history other than the 27 Yankees. So when that team dismantled, I followed Pete Rose to the Phillies. Well, he won a championship with the Phillies back in the day. They should have won 2 World Series, but that's a whole another thing. I also said I followed him when he returned back to Cincinnati. I didn't follow Pete Rose when he went to play for the Montreal Expos. I just couldn't root for baseball in Canada. Let's move on. But I'm saying all this just to say that folks coming to Jackson State because of Coach Sanders is nothing new to sports and nothing negative. However, the problem is when folks become fan of a team and never take the time to learn the history of the team or that team's conference. That's when you get a lot of people saying a lot of uninformed and just idiotic things. Now, of course, let's be clear. Alabama State's Coach Robinson proved that you could be rooted in the tradition and still make some asinine comments about it. So being new to something does not necessarily mean that one is ignorant of it, especially if one does one's homework. Yet there are a lot of folks not doing homework, right? But so again, those people, those new fans, those new fake fans, right? But the problem is we got a lot of traditionalist folks, SWAC schools, like saying crazy stuff. Like you got SWAC folks who claim to be traditionalists make idiotic assertions that, well, Jackson State was a perpetual bottom feeder before Coach Sanders arrived. Jackson State has over 500 football victories, with only 8 other HBCUs having more football victories than Jackson State. So how in the you-know-what was Jackson State a perpetual bottom feeder? So one can argue that part of the effect that Coach Sanders has had on HBCU sports and SWAC in particular is that the people, the viewership, has become populated with a lot of folks who know very little about the history of HBCU sports. So it is the responsibility, and I do mean this word responsibility because what I'm about to say is going to upset a few folks. The responsibility of those of us who know the history to do a better job of teaching and even correcting those people who make uninformed statements. For instance, there's a sports journalist named Jamie Walker. He's a North Carolina A&T grad. Jamie Walker and I are the only 2 HBCU grads that I've ever known to correct or condemn our own school supporters when they're disseminating false information or being nasty or rude to other HBCUs. I don't condone JSU fans, traditional or new. I don't condone JSU fans being foolish or ignorant in chat rooms just because other fans are doing the same to us. I know we get a lot of hate, but just because you get hate don't mean you have to stoop. What your grandmama used to say, if everybody jump out the window, you gonna jump out the window too? So if everybody out there being foolish, you gonna be foolish too? I just wasn't raised that way, and I don't care who has a problem with it because I love my school more than I love you. So those are the 2 distinctions between traditional and non-traditional fans and some of the problems that can arise from both. So yes, we know we have a lot of new people and that a lot of people are uninformed and they're here for Coach Sanders. We just have to accept that that's just part of the game. Brother, first, I'm sure that you got a lot of people who like your music, who may interpret your music in a way that you never intended people to interpret that music, that just come with the territory. But what we can do, right? Those people who love, because again, I'm a Prince scholar. I don't have that. My book on Prince has been taught at 10 different universities. You can search. I've given all kinds of presentations on Prince. I publish poetry about Prince. I don't have a problem correcting people new to Prince by saying, hey, that's not true, or you need to read this, you need to research that. So those of us who claim to love Jackson State and love SWAC and love HBCU, what we have to do is do what you're doing. Call people out, but we have to call people out while we educate them. And I'm calling on all my real Jackson State fans. We got the history. We know the love. We don't have to be mean and nasty and malicious to people. You can always correct people by simply saying, here is the truth. Here's the information. And now, if you give people the truth and they still don't change, then that's on them. My grandmother used to say, hey, I got all this good steak and vegetables and fruit for you. If you go out there in the street and get lunch meat, that's on you. So at Jackson State, we just happen to be one of the hottest universities, and it's just part of the territory. But I agree that we know who's real and who's really fake when their whole point is Coach Sanders should go somewhere else. Coach Sanders should go coach somewhere else. But that's not only, especially when it's coming from Black people, but we have to do what you called it. Anybody who's saying that Coach Sanders should go somewhere else, that's either based on white supremacy or Black self-hatred.
And that's exactly the point I'm trying to make, because they're not seeing the moment. Like I was telling a group of students recently, we're in the 2020s, and we could really have what they had in the 1920s, which is a Black Renaissance. We could really have that. And sports is a big part of culture. And him being at Jack State University as one of the greatest athletes ever, and the juice and the energy he's brought to the institution could really help enrollment. You bring in, like I said, one sister was talking about she had engineering students, prospective engineering student, more than she had in a while. Why? Because we were trending because of football.
That's right.
So when people, Black people especially, are saying things like he needs to go to Auburn or Georgia Tech and stuff like that, they're not thinking about the broader effect that comes with him being at our institution. Because Auburn and Georgia Tech don't need that.
Well, but also goes back to what, Carter G. Woodson, Miseducation of the Negro, right? When Black people are saying that, one of the problems when you talk about that Renaissance, one of the things that has never happened, and it just hasn't happened in a really major way, is that we've never had a discussion about Black self-hatred. We've discussed political power. We've discussed economic power. We've discussed social movement. But we've never had a real sustained dialogue to understand. Because, see, the problem is psychological oppression is the greatest oppression. Think about this. Slaves outnumbered the slave masters on the plantation 10-1. So it wasn't just physical brute force that kept them from rising up, right? It was that psychological oppression. And until Black people learn to value themselves, right? I tell people all the time, white flight has never destroyed the city. See, this is the biggest lie. White flight has never destroyed the city. White flight did not destroy the city of Jackson. What hurt the city of Jackson is when middle-class Black people decided they couldn't live without white folk. And until we are able to understand that we have all the resources and we have all the talent that we need, then we can actually then have a real movement to become sovereign people. So what's the thing to which you're really speaking is the need to have a real, we've never had a real, we've had a say it, James Brown, say it loud, I'm Black and I'm proud. We've had the Black Lives Matter movement, but we've never had our major quote leadership, other than somebody like Malcolm X, right? Later Minister Farrakhan, but they were considered too radical and too fringe. If you think about our major quote civil rights leaders, right? I think SNCC The Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee did it better than anybody. If you look at SNCC, NAACP, SCLC, CORE, none of our major civil rights leadership really addressed the lingering self-hatred, the lingering psychological oppression from slavery and the black codes and Jim Crow. And until we have that discussion, you're going to always have not just a small amount, you're going to have a large amount of black people who are going to think that being in the presence and next to white people. But I'm glad about this, and I tell people this: no matter how long co-standard stays, right? People like to say, well, what y'all gonna do at Jackson State when y'all leave? We're gonna still be the second oldest R2 research institution, HBCU, in the country. That's what we're gonna be. We're gonna be the school that U.S. News and World Report has never had out of the top 20 in its academic ranking. That's what we're gonna be. And we'll still be the only HBCU to ever lead the FCS in attendance. But no matter how long co-standard stays, he is at least given a model and something to which all of us could point to say, black sovereignty is possible, but it is going to be dependent upon black people themselves overcoming the hurdle of black self-hatred to believe that we can be our own people and we can be sovereign.
Well, appreciate you, OG, real ones. Y'all chime in about the fake love that Jack State's been receiving, in part from the governor of the state of Mississippi, but also from some of our own calling on Coach Prime to leave Jack State. Put it on some.
Thank you so much for watching my daddy's YouTube channel. Make sure you like, share, and turn on your post notifications. Okay, how do I do it?